Hello, thank you so much for joining us. I did want to reach out to Jessica Wren and congratulate her on her book release. Also, send out a very warm thank you so much for hosting this and allowing us a few moments, well, a few hours anyway, of taking over your event for you. I also want to reach out a thank you to C.L. Schneider for taking or allowing me to take a moment of her time to talk about me. So, I am going to go ahead and start off with a basic bio. I'm off my game today, I can tell you that right now. I was up last night being sick. So I'm kind of like, this is the next day after sick look for me. So I'm going to go over very quickly here and just talk about me. Talk about me. Um, I am a Walking Dead fan. This is Cindy's favorite mug, except for the one where you see his face. But so I am a cat lover. That is probably the first thing you need to know about me, because while you watch some of my videos, you are going to notice cats walking, cats climbing, cats right here purring. It's kind of my MO at this point. It's kind of like I host story time. I did not have books growing up, and for a writer, that's just weird. But I did not have books growing up, and by the time I finally got my hands on a book, I was 12. It was a huge event for me, and it absolutely shaped my life. So it wasn't just ooh, I remember the first book I read. It was a massive, monumental, it was a big deal. I was 12, and the book was Les Miserables. I don't start small. I jumped right into French literature of the 19th century with Victor Hugo. It took me 3 months to read it, but I read it. I absolutely adored it. And from there, I started reading. I went right into Phantom of the Opera then. And oh, did I fall hard. I adored Phantom of the Opera. And then I read it like 18 times. It was not in the school library available to anyone else for like 3 years until I got my own copy. And I slept with that book under my pillow every night like a teddy bear because it was my teddy bear. So I have a deep passion for French literature, which I can honestly say has definitely gone on to influence my writing. But one thing before you panic and go, oh no, French lit. Classic French lit has a tendency to be wordy. I am not. This is one thing about French lit that I've learned. As much as I love Victor Hugo, reading 50 pages on the French Revolution right off about Napoleon Bonaparte, I appreciate what he went through. I appreciate history. I wanted the story. So, I started off with French literature. Now, this is where I really want to get into what I'm talking about here because book lovers just love this story. So I lived in an old town. Actually, it was a horse town. From the view, you look down at this town. It is a picturesque, gorgeous country town. We didn't have deer crossing; those were up on the highway. We have horse and buggy crossings, horse crossings. Like I grew up in a horse town, and it's funny because I didn't really process this until I went back recently and went, oh, yeah, there are horses everywhere, aren't there? And I mean everywhere. You could not drive from town to my house without passing 5 horse farms. So it was very normal to be driving along and seeing a rider on the side of the road. You had to share the road with horses. You just, that's what you did. I grew up with a girlfriend who had 2 horses of her own, so I would go over to her house and we would ride horses. So I've been around my share of the gorgeous creatures, just absolutely beautiful creatures. And enough about the horses. I'm going to set that aside now. We also had this one house, or this one location in town, across the street from the school and the 5 churches, was an old library that had been converted to let's rephrase that. It was an opera house that was built in the 1800s. Well, the opera house fell into disrepair and its use kind of became obsolete with the decline of the arts, and it was converted to the public library. So this was my town's public library. It wasn't just a library, it had a full working opera house above it. So the first floor where you make your entrance was the library, and then there was a staircase that led upstairs to the opera house, and that's where they stored all their books. Now their books. they had books that were over 200 years old in this location, and they just sat there. So the lady who worked in the library was a friend, the mother of a friend of mine, and she gave us basically privileged access up there where we could play with the opera house. So I spent many a time sitting up there and just playing with the theater, and then browsing, of course, the 8 million books at my disposal. I need to go find it. I'm not certain exactly its location, but I have a Bible from the 1600s, and I would comb through and not look for things to read, because honestly these were the rejects, or they were just so old that they were out of print, but out of print is an understatement. I also have Lord Tennyson from the, I believe it was 1800s. It's definitely from the 1800s. I'm just not sure where. It's just amazing. I absolutely go nuts over old books. One of these days I'm actually going to pull a couple of them out. Actually, just a minute. This is where I keep most of them. Most of them. So, and what stinks is I love this is, and this, by the way, is the era that gave birth to Don't Judge a Book by Its Cover. This is Kathleen Norris, and I don't know if you guys can find Kathleen Norris today. Let me see if I can. Yeah, we're talking old books, and I can't tell you the publication. I have to punch it into the computer and look it up. This is The Complete Poetical Works of George Darley, first collected, reprinted from the rare original editions in the possession of the Darley family, and edited with an introduction. And this was printed in London by George Routledge and Sons Limited, New York, E.P. Dutton & Co. So it was published in New York, but it looks like London was originally the holders. To Professor Edward Dowden, this complete edition of George Darley's poems is inscribed by the editor. And some of these are so old, they don't even have copyright. Yeah, wrap your head around that one. They don't even have copyrights posted on there. So some of them, I don't even know how old they were. Yeah. So, absolutely gorgeous. I'll have to do some research on this one to see when it came along. This one is one of my favorites, and it was one of my first. This is by Charlene Norris, Kathleen Norris, called Beauty's Daughter. Now, Kathleen Norris, it's weird because I went up to Thousand Islands. You know the salad dressing, Thousand Island salad dressing. I actually live about 3 hours from the Thousand Islands, which is a misnomer. There's really 2,000 islands. And in fact, that is my zombie apocalypse plan. Whenever they take over, we're heading north to the take over an island of the zombie apocalypse. Now, this one was reprinted in 1944. And I don't know about the rest of you who are born in the 80s, but I'm having a really hard time to imagine that 100 years ago was World War I. I just had an argument with my husband last night going, no, 100 years ago was the Civil War. And he goes, no, 100 years ago was World War I. So 100 years ago, almost, will be World War II. And I'm just really having a hard time processing that. So, 1944. In 20 years, this book will be 100 years old. And Kathleen Norris, her name pops up every now and then. So I was over at Thousand Islands, and I went into the Hart Castle. New York has a lot of awesome treasures around here. And there's a Hart Castle. I don't know if you know it, because it is kind of folklore. It is legend in the area. So I will tell you about that in a moment. But there's a castle that exists up there, and the owner of the castle collected books, and one of the books, he had Kathleen Norris like lining the shelf, which is, I saw that and I'm like, oh my goodness, look, it's all of her books, which was a rare treat for me to see. But really, and I have this on my Instagram account, I'm gonna have to upload it and show you guys. I have been this close to a second edition Edgar Allan Poe, The Raven, and a first edition Ernest Hemingway, For Whom the Bell Tolls. They had it in the gift shop, not for sale, I checked, under display, and I'm just like, so it was just a wonderful experience. So I will tell you about Hart Castle, and then I'm going to let you go, and I love telling stories. I love telling stories. So I live in New York, and when you hear New York, most people outside of New York think New York City, and that's just, as much as I love the city, it's not, there's a whole lot more to New York than most people realize. So there was a man, almost 100 years ago. He absolutely loved and adored his wife. His name was, I believe, George Bolt, B-O-L-D-T. He loved his wife beyond all recognition. He bought her an island up 1,000 Islands and built her a castle. She became ill while they were building the castle, and it was very near completion. The goal with his castle was to instill hearts throughout the entire thing. And I think there were recorded over 1 million hearts. They have the exact number down. I have to look it up. But it's a stunning castle, just stunning. And she died before it was completed. The telegram, well, he was with his wife when she died, and literally minutes after she died, he sent a telegram to the island and said, "Stop work." The order came in immediately, and everyone put down their tools and walked away. The castle is there, still, with the tools still laying in their exact location where the workers set them down years ago when the owner said, "Stop working." The castle is still incomplete, and it will always be incomplete. And you can take tours on it now. I went on a tour of it. And what was amazing, they say that there's hearts, and there are hearts everywhere. And I tried to take a picture of each and every fashioned one. Like, they're stained glass, and you see them in the stained glass. But it's more than that. I have a picture of this. I'll show you. You go to reach for a doorknob, and where the lock is, it's actually a heart. And then, it's so beautiful! It's a heart, and then there's a little keyhole in the center of the heart. And then, of course, the railings all have hearts in the ironwork. But this is where I was floored. When you walk up at a certain time during the day, and you're walking up the steps, I noticed I was walking on little hearts. And I looked over and realized that the sun was going through the railing, hitting the hearts, and then projecting a second heart on the steps. It was just so very beautiful. They have weddings there. If you're interested, yeah, you can rent this place for weddings. There was a wedding there when I went there, but it's a very beautiful place. I also went to Singer Castle. Singer Castle was owned by the singer of Singer Sewing Machine. So I also went to Singer Castle, which he had his castle was built in ode to, I can't think of the name of the book, but it was with the idea that it was a real Nordic castle. Like, you get there and you're going, did I just step into Europe? So yes, the moral of the story is America does have castles, real castles. So that is a good explanation of what I am through storytelling. I am a storyteller. I do adore books, like obsessively so, beyond what is healthy. I also garden, of course, and that's where I live now. I have surrounded my house with 9 gardens and 3 cats. I have the potential of being a very promising cat collector. My husband sees that this endeavor will never come to fruition. I don't care. So, I'm going to leave you here for now. That is my massive introduction, and I will be back to talk about how awesome my books are. Thank you.